a couple of strategies that we think can reduce the food gap. And one of them is to improve fortification, so to improve the monitoring and regulation of fortification. But what is currently happening, how can monitoring and and testing and all of those things be better implemented, and how can we hold to account those that are not actually fortifying up to standards. Then another thing is really to have protein-rich foods more affordable. So we have identified a strategy of double discounting a basket of 10 protein-rich foods, and this really involves government providing a subsidy to some basic protein-rich foodstuffs that are shelf-stable and that are commonly consumed, so things like eggs, peanut butter, beans, pilchards, etc. So protein-rich food items that we know people are not getting enough of due to the high cost. And then also retailers and manufacturers coming in and also providing a discount to that. So then we can end up with a 20 to 30% discount on these foods.
So and I'm sure obviously in your discussions this has come up, but I would want to kind of probably talk people through this the proposal for that, government coming in and business coming in, because government's sort of standard line is always, we don't have money. And I assume that you kind of have come up with different scenarios where money can be released from different places, or how that could actually be resourced. Has that conversation come into play?
So we know, I think it's about the cost, the estimated cost, and it's difficult also to get a precise cost just because the retail prices are so fluctuating, and sort of import costs, etc. But I think the cost of doing that as a population level comes at about 5 billion rand. Now, if you just think about so there's cost modeling done on the cost of what the maternal support grant and low, the impact of low birth weight babies, just what that costs the health system, right? So that costs the health system approximately 13.9 billion rand a year. So that's just in health costs alone. So there's a lot of competing things competing for the available budget that there is. But the strategies that we are putting on the table, we believe are all cost-effective strategies. If you look at sort of the larger, the bigger asks and what the return on investment is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking because I've never been a participant in that discussion that says there is no money. It's exactly like what you're saying. There is money, but where is the money actually being allocated, and where are the inefficiencies that have been identified? I mean, we see the AG reports every year, and we're hemorrhaging billions. So for me, that kind of argument is kind of like a non-starter, and exactly like what you're saying, right? So you spend 5 billion versus the 13 billion that it's costing your public health system, right? So you kind of have to make that evaluation of what is actually worth it, but also the economic impact, right? And not having people who are able to actually participate in a productive way, in order to rebuild our economy, which is in shambles right now again. So you're kind of just chipping away at potential, solutions to the problem that exists. So I just wanted to kind of hear what your thinking was around that, and kind of the proposals that have been put on the table, and what probably the response has been to those proposals.
Yeah. And I also think it's important that the retailers and manufacturers from the industry sector, they also come in.
Yes.
Because, in the end, it's also good for their business.
Exactly.
If they contribute to this. If, we have a strong economy, we have a prospering South Africa, it's good for business. And, a lot of these, businesses, they have, CSI projects and CSI arms, and so corporate social investment and corporate social responsibility, things that they are doing. And we are just, wanting them to, let's look at things that are, coordinated big things that
on a systemic level
that we can all stand behind, and let's put our funding that's there. Let's sort of,
it's like a demonstration in a caring, towards the people that also invariably also make you money.
Exactly. If you are seen as sort of doing social good, and you are really you really are doing social good. You're not just
Yes.
doing it to market your product or to
Yes.
sort of drive your own agenda, but really sort of working towards public health goals that have been identified and that are evidence based and proven to be effective in reducing inequalities and improving child health outcomes and economic potential. Then also briefly touched on the multiple micronutrient for women during pregnancy. So looking at if it's feasible in South Africa to change from iron folic acid to multiple micronutrient supplementation. Like I said, there's really strong global evidence that it reduces adverse birth outcomes, like for example low birth weight, and also infant mortality and some maternal adverse outcomes during pregnancy. We know that from global evidence that MMS is really superior to iron folic acid supplementation, but we also need to look at the South African context and would it be feasible? Yes. So we are also investing in that sense and working with different partners to see sort of what the steps are, what is needed to assess the implementation feasibility in South Africa, and can that be done? Because we believe it's a feasible way to, and again, cost-effective way to reduce malnutrition amongst pregnant women and micronutrient deficiencies and low birth weight. So MMS, a big thing that we are also focusing on, working with partners already on that. And then one of the other things that we've touched on briefly is also looking at food waste and food waste reduction. So how can this 45% of food, that's wasted in South Africa, what can be done about that? So we are a country that are abundant in food, but still we have, 20% of people with moderate to severe food insecurity. How, that doesn't make sense. So what needs to happen around that? So we're investigating that avenue as well. And then also, the maternal support grant, so looking at mother and child initiatives. So the maternal support grant really focusing on social support for women during pregnancy, so extending the child support grant back into pregnancy so that women in their most vulnerable time, where they're also very vulnerable to unemployment, are really supported, because no woman needs to make the decision, should I take my money for taxi if I need to visit my antenatal, go to my antenatal visit at my clinic, or should I buy food? That's not a decision you have to make. Or should I use my transport money for the clinic or to go to work? It's not, if they have a job, because let's face it, a lot of pregnant women are not seen as, especially in the most vulnerable groups, are not seen as people that you would want to employ, and that puts them in a very, very vulnerable position. And we know also from evidence that social protection during pregnancy improves maternal and child health outcomes. All of the things we're looking at, very evidence-based, cost-effective things that we believe can be implemented quite fast if there's political will. And that's why we are looking to work with partners and stakeholders and also, of course, academics and civil society and government to really see how we can accelerate these actions that can really help put children first, their health first, so that in 10 years' time, we can look back and say, we did something that mattered. We did something that sort of changed the trajectory of the child in South Africa. We now have sort of higher rates of children staying in school. We have higher rates of children finishing school. We have fewer child mortalities. We have reduced our risk of stunting. We have reduced stunting rates. We've reduced malnutrition rates. We've reduced maternal anemia, we've reduced child anemia, all of those things. If we can, in 10 years' time, look at that and, we become a global case study of how things can be done. So that's the dream. We want to accelerate action for children, and we have like a couple of big basket items. But so there's more things around the accelerator. So the whole matter accelerator is not only about food. So I'm talking about food security, but we're also looking at other elements to help accelerate action for children. So, the children with disabilities aren't excluded. So hearing and vision tests for young children. We're looking at improving responsive caregiving, looking at adolescents' mental health and well-being. So there's and obviously sort of also strengthening the education and early learning for children. So there's a couple of things that the accelerator wants to focus on, but definitely closing the food gap is and with the different interventions and strategies on that. That's going to be my focus for the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's a big focus. I always kind of think about this conversation around food, and it seems to me that there's a tension around this issue of food. One, that should we be talking about, like, should we be having to explain to people the importance of food, because it's like a given, why are we having a conversation about food and whether or not people should be getting food? Like, why is it a debate? Why is it a negotiation? And I just, I'm always interested to get people's thoughts around that, because it's also such a personal thing, right? Because food is like, it permeates every part of your life. It kind of brings people around a table together, but also there's a sense of shame from not actually having enough food or being able to provide food for your family. And, the kind of the values within a country or within a society that normalize a situation where, 20% of households are, food insecure. So I just, because you're telling me all the hard evidence and all of those kinds of things, but I just think, from a values perspective, the kind of country that we live in, we have a constitutional imperative, that says people have a right to food. What would you say to that?
For me, it boggles my mind, and it's a sad situation that we are living in this reality, that we are not able to provide for the most vulnerable the basic needs that they have a right to. We need to find a mechanism to also hold government and other parties to account for why this is happening. So for me, the issue around food, not having enough food, is about sort of the power asymmetries that are existing, and who decides where help is needed, who decides where money is going, who decides what is monitored, who decides who is, being held to account. Food is medicine, like Hippocrates, what he used to say. Yeah. But it's, really like what we consume has such a important effect on our health. Yes, there are also other things. We know that water hygiene, sanitation, the wash things, if we can't utilize the nutrients because we are sick, if we don't have, if we can't treat sort of also, basic, hygiene conditions, that's also a big contributor, for example, to malnutrition. But even that's very closely linked for me to food. We should also be looking at how do we improve the living conditions of people. Personally, I feel the only thing I can do is, what can I think about is what can I do in my corner to help? What can I work on today that can improve this? Because for me, the food system in South Africa is so messy and so unequal. And looking at everything, you can get really, I think, overwhelmed by all the work that needs to be done. But what are the few things we can focus on? What can I focus on today? You with the podcast, just like bringing the awareness to people, with the articles you do in the Daily Maverick, sort of, speaking to a specific group of people. that's another piece of the puzzle. The more awareness we create, at a certain level, that can also then, carry on and sort of, filter through to other levels of consciousness and perhaps sort of, activate change or inspire change. So, I know it's a long answer because it's very difficult for me. I'm still angry every day.
Yeah.
If I think about food insecurity, if I see children that don't have enough food. If I also go to communities, South Africa, the reality is obesity is also a big thing. 50% of the population are obese. And I think it's 7 or 8 out of 10 women are overweight or obese, right? So that's also like a social norm. So if you in a community that is perhaps not aware of the risk that certain types of food hold, food that are highly processed or high in salt, high in sugar, high in fats, and you continue consuming that, you're not actually realizing, what it is doing to health. And that's all that is accessible to you.
Yeah.
You are living in a situation, in an area perhaps that you only have processed food, that's affordable to you. Yes, there are fruits and vegetables. They are often more expensive, but in some communities and in rural areas, it's more feasible to grow some of your food and vegetables. It's not a solution in all areas. And it also angers me that the responsibility is put on the individual to make the healthy choice.
Yeah.
Because, choice implies some kind of freedom, right? Like you have options between option A and option B. So long answer, but maybe to say I'm angry, but I'm trying not to get overwhelmed by it. And I think there are a lot of excellent people with sort of excellent, ideas and that sort of want to work hard and want to sort of fix this problem. It's about sort of getting enough of them on board and thinking collaboratively and in a coordinated way so that we can address this. Because there are good people and there are good policies. We just need to figure out how everybody can coordinate and work together.
Yeah. Join us again next week for a brand new episode of What's Eating Us.